got a really great show for us today, all about the Social Security bonds, yes? Do you know about those? Yeah, and these are all the ones that are owned by the Social Security Administration, yes? And who spent monies against that? Yes? Somebody could look to see, of course, those are the things that's gone on. Things have been pulled from the public fund and your Social Security number and things can have been used, certainly. But isn't under 18 USC, you've really got laws, of course, which means that anyone who collected any debt from you, where that is that committed sort of false claims, of course, there's an act, False Claim Act, that's 31 USC 3729. There's so many things which is written which help protect where people are. And this is on the private side of the court, where people are, where the Commonwealth of Nations is. This is the right side of the court, the King's Bench, or here it's Article 3 or Article 4. Because a lot of the things which go on where things are, you can't get signed off just by two infant decedents talking to each other. And, Article 3 and Article 4 must be, and higher, where, you've got security interests and things that go on. Well, anyway, something plasticizing everything, and where anything is added like that to food, it starts to sort of really become more rubbery. And it's a chemical bond that puts where food is into a container, and plastics and a massive heat then suddenly vaporizes all of that, which could have been on the material surface that the food was on, and placed on and traveling around. Isn't that plastic that food is wrapped in, and what then it's put into the oven to heat up? Haven't you got plastic polyethyl glycol molecule, and easily found, isn't it? Yes, in the food that would have been where heatedness, where that plastic was, you're finding that in the food. So isn't that something which you could think about, because you're got a bank of energy and that's positively inducted, and this is the current that flows, that you have where your household good is. And isn't your household good? Yes, isn't that your domiciledness versus far away somewhere inside some corpse? But if you ask, yes, what's a non-jurisdictional EIN, and you get this from the IRS, and you want a Title 8 organisation that's a non-jurisdictional trust, and you could learn about what to do where things are. Yet life colloid and the nerve and all of this that's living inside you, can you imagine you've got 86 billion nerves, yes? And somewhere, 100 trillion synapses, all controlling your heart and inspiration and temperature. And you've got a blood pressure, and, somebody's traveling at 1 to 120 meters per second. You only really have a pressure where something is where it decelerates or accelerates, but otherwise it's like a frame dragged and you're being dragged along by something else. You could be playing cards on the deck and no change of pace occurred and you wouldn't feel anything. You've got myelin sheathing, and that's like a fat that's a semiconductive property which is around your nerve. And there is a readiness potential that's sent, yes, many seconds before an action potential is actually sent. And you've got maybe 1,000, several hundred kilometres of nerve sort of thing. behind every movement that's made? And isn't the HIV, where that is and was, a antibody that comes to be a gain of function put, because you've got a material spike protein that's made from the same synthetics, and you've got glycoproteins in there, and you've got the sole sort of condition of some envelope around that viral material, which is toxic, and a protein, which is a major component of immunogenicity where you are, and the encodedness where some gene expression is. And so the alert evermore where somebody is, where, is that you've got unique inserts where the COVID N, the nCovid 219, sort of all of those have an identity that's similar amino acid and residue. And in T protein, sort of like you've got the same in HIV-1, for instance, and, sort of just fortuitous, is it? That's in nature that happens? Not really, no. It's the work where some unknown insight really ever more is shedding light on the involuted condition that we have versus evolution, which doesn't exist. Because you've only got curves in to make, life, and curves out don't do that. So pathogenicity, where a virus is, you could just substitute the word for a venom, because that's what that just means, really. And it's important because you've got implication where you're looking at what to do and coming up with, a proper approach, and where somebody became infected because something broke the bridge of our ordinariness, and something was injected into the body or put there where some temperedness of food is without anyone knowing. That's like putting toxin where things are. And so you've got a DIVOC, which is just COVID spelled backward, and 19 is a code, and all of that is something which designed and to be producing these spike proteins on the surface of other molecule, which it has spikes on its own self because it's so acidic. And so in the immune system, of course, you have to be able to recognize where protein is a foreign protein, and typically, good immunity mounts some response to that. But how does it where something is existed that's synthetic and is enzyme resistant? And these are quite problematic because they form on the particle that also isn't meant to be in the body. And so messenger RNA sorts of injectables that contain RNA, nobody will say that half a strand doesn't combine with another strand, which it does pleomorphically in big batches. Pleomorphism goes on. And can that be found, of course, where you do a spectrum analysis on the size of the packet that you've got existing where that is? Of course you can. It could tell you exactly that you've got, DNA in there as well. That's not supposed to be, for sure, because that's going to definitely cause a clotting of the blood. And anyway, add-ons where things are, like they found where the simian 40 was a long time ago, and papilloma types of spore. It's easy to have created all of that from an amino acid, methionine, and homocysteine. You can see that if somebody has excessive methionine produced and they don't have any B vitamins to be able to convert homocysteine, that methionine goes to when it's spent, that is left, and it really does cause more spiked conditions where membrane is, and that's the challenge where lipoprotein A gets laid down inside the arteries. So, the skull marrow, 45%, all of that spike protein ends up where this is, an excavator where it is into the tissue of the brain. An additional 27% of all of that spike protein goes into the colon and is ionized, and calcium-binded sorts of adapters molecules end up where, people end up with these positive myeloid enzyme-resistant material in their body, which can't sort of be broken down properly, which really is going to cause clotting to not really function like it can. And so fibrin is grows a vine-like net, and where you've got enzyme-resistant material there, these are things which then can't sort of really be broken down properly. But whoever is to witness where something is living, or who is living, is certainly higher than anything as a corporation. And corpus delicti is where their bodies existed behind something, and you're the living witness. And that's you where you are, anything is, even in all caps. And think about and remember under 18 USC, 8, of course, it means that anybody who collected a debt from you really that was done by fraud has committed a false claims act under 31 USC 3729. Everyone wants to be more on the common law side where things are, and to be able to face whoever it is existed where somebody would have been harmed, injured, costed, or damaged because, but maybe no one is, but you probably are. And the prosecutor really that's making some bonded claim should be done where that's under penalty of perjury in a common law court or record trial by jury process, which is an actual process which is for you and I in a venue which is before jurisdiction. Venue means where it's from. And so you're from the land. All of these things really have occurred to you that's on the land. And so somebody could be objected because they would really care to have a fiduciary that can identify where the trust is of the state of anything bonded, where some claim is, and because they could say certain that they never had anything handed to them to be able to see. So you've got molecules, of course, midazolam, which was used in this time and still where intubation is, and morphine-like molecule where all of this, where it's excessive or anything, is sort of linked to death as well. And it's linked to, medical intervention and iatrogenic caused condition. And if somebody looks a little closer, you could see quantum sorts of dots and fluorescent dots and things coming up where people's body is. And in Canada, if anybody infringed upon the right of someone to have applied jurisdiction where any claim is, of course, you're innocent under, Section 24(1), and you've got a remedy. It's you're the living being and you're the living witness, and something else has to be of the same jointedness where parties are, otherwise that doesn't exist. It's the beneficiary that's you of the constructive trust, and it should be that's just, for the record and noted, it's you're requiring the fiduciary to state what their bonded claim is, if anything does exist, which is typical that it doesn't. So wherever anybody is a witness, of course, you're witnessing some charge, and that should be discharged. And since 2020, 2021, I think you've got maybe, I don't know, the statistics aren't too transparent like they should be, but maybe 14.9 million excess deaths. And all of it comes in a time where you've got these injectables and toxin, of course, and, it's really, isn't it nutrient that actually is helpful where things are? Of course, you've got lipase, which is an enzyme for breaking fats down, and if it's not adulterated, meaning it's got its enzymatic capacity left, it has a zeta potential to pass through the bulk of everything that you have where your body is, if like enzymes that come from olives that are black, that have been dried in the sun, and just with a bit of sea salt and wind evaporated, of course. And olive oil, where this is extraordinary because you've got oleic acid, you've got olivine, you've got numerous powerful compounds. You've got oleocanthal, and you really find inside natural phenolic compound, which really is high quality, and in these extra sort of virgin olive oils and things, especially if it's enzymatically active, and it's got its lignins still there. So enzymatic value is very powerful because you've got this multi-targeted sorts of conditions where anti-neoplastic element is, and these are all anti-inflammatories. And so there's just too many nutrients, just like oleic acid, where live food is that's transmutatable into essential fats. And it's your intestinal life colloid that do this, and oleic acid and olivine and oleocanthal, all of these inhibit inflammatory pathways. So you've got a fitness that should be, and it suppresses these enzymes like these COX-1 enzymes and COX-2s, which has the effect of reducing the pro-inflammatory types of signaling and dampening the oxidative stress as a result of that. So you're going to tell me that monosaturated short-chain fats like oleic acid can't be grown up into these larger chains like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9? Yes, it is. And it is from your intestinal flora and having the right material to get to do that. It's these short-chain monosaturated fats. So centuries, of course, Mediterranean oleic acid and olivine and the content of oleic acid itself being sought after as a healing aid. And in live food, you've got these monosaturated fats you stick with, and that's something which you learn about, where you'd have to look into live food. But it's got certain antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effect and healing up. So, you're feeling better, how relaxed your shoulders are and tummy. Otherwise, neoplasm really is a cell proliferation and remission where this happens and can be triggered. It gets all put together because you're maybe looked into jump cell rejuvenation, this sort of thing. Human clinical trials or could be just a bit scarce where anything is, but definitely, no question about it, you've got oleocanthal, which is obtained through olive oil and concentrates of extracts of this. And these are just beautiful diet-based sorts of tools which give you a good capacity to be able to, help where things are. And so it's really your really common law court where things are, and it's common law court a record trial by jury process, and you're facing someone, or maybe there's not anyone there, so, that's where that is, isn't it? You're discharging the charges and putting everything, which is the bond that is in your name, given to you to be able to help discharge everything because you don't have any argument whatsoever. You might have questions that need to be answered. And prosecuting things where a bonded claim is under penalty and perjury, it's sort of, you could be objecting and truly wanting to make sure that your fiduciary is present and that some bonded claim has been stated. Yes. And so it's really, these chemicals and everything that's gone into things and who had the ability just to adulterate the air or the water or the food. That's what this is about, really. Of course, what is holding promises, you've got a whole food vitamin mineral complex, and this can support inflammation, clear things up and control neoplastic condition to have sort of more resilience. Otherwise, there's these turbo neoplastic conditions that need to be kept at bay, and toxins where any injectables was into your lettuce or anything, it impacts these ACE1 and 2 sort of receptors where live food being in your diet and whole food vitamin mineral complexes really give you protection. And so it's adequate amounts of nutrient and what's the fitness where something is. Otherwise, a toxin is a toxin, of course, and your capacity to be able to clear things away. And it's certainly helpful that you could have learned what the influence is and expression of these ACE1 and 2 receptor, and how critical a role it is that things like niacinamide and things help protect the body and guard the cardiovascular and immune system more. And so you've got hormones like hormone D, and you've got what is ever indicating the regulation of the expression of these ACE1 and ACE2 sort of receptors, but vitamin A, that's retinoic acid, and active metabolites where vitamin A is. These are all upregulating and assisting these ACE1 and ACE2 sorts of receptors. And vitamin C-like compound whole food vitamin mineral complex have ACE2 levels where this is, and you've got protein expression that reduces the capacity for any toxin, like what somebody could say that's a virus, it's a toxin, synthetic material, and substances who've got no ecological condition in the body. And the things that come about afterward come from all of these gain of function types of things that have gone on. Where life food is, of course, you should have a paying attention as to really vitamin B3, niacin, which is essential, and compounds which like this increase the expression of ACE2. That's likely through its interaction where you've got these like 1 proteins and things coming into your program because you've got heath bushes and things which really don't grow too much on sunlight, but more the life colloid which is in the soil. You've got potassium that could come to be more increased, and potassium, in its natural state, which has got the number 19 instead of 18 on it, it's got 19, and you've got a north negative spare. But when all of that's cooked, do you have that? Not too much. Micronutrient really that's abundant on life food. Of course, you've got rhodium, iron, magnesium, iodine, boron, copper, and zinc. And zinc's anti-inflammatory properties just alone is so important where the immune system is, and you've got to know what's orthophilic versus, it's just mined from the ground, which is a toxin. So life food and Jup Cell Rejuvenation product really targets and gives you a boosted immune system, and it's enzymatically able to be clearing away all of the immune complexes so that you can raise the albumin levels of your body. So these ACE inhibitors really are competitive inhibitors and block that conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. And so if your mind is relaxed, you've reduced the amount of that going on, and you reduce inflammation as a result. So enzymatic food and the value of whole brain patterning and things, all of this really is vital. And if you're noticing whatever clinical evidence exists, of course, going back to New York University and Jups Longevity, which we had for some time, it was really giving people remedy where they are, and this would be changing your lifestyle. And something was chronic and even great, which was like a brain vascular occlusions and things like this, and pancreatic inflammation and kidney diseases. All of these people really healed up. You've got life food, and you've got a whole food vitamin mineral complexes, you see, which we should focus on, because this is what's natural, where vitamins are, and vitamin K, and having protection on this level slows down all of the maladies and everything. And so why not look into the 42-day life food nutritional cleanse and look at bringing in whole food vitamin mineral complexes during the time of this, because these are the things which hold promise, and it's really the natural-based types of tools which we have, and if to be able to learn, hey, what's non-ecological, this is not anything that could be supported by any argument. No, it's non-ecological, okay? So we've got incredible conditions which you could tune into right now, because you could be learning a little bit more about how to clear away the condition, which is like a turbo neoplastic types of conditions, which is coming to be more rife. And so, like, could you be looking at a 42-day life food nutritional cleanse because you really need to clear away stone from the body? Have you heard about stone in the body? You could be looking at like what you think a stone is, but like stone is really material that could be in plaque, which is quite rubbery as well. You've got whole food vitamin mineral complexes, and that's not an analog of a vitamin. That's a real whole food vitamin mineral complex. It's really what you could be focused more on. And the product, which I've always been behind, it's all to reduce the plaque, yes, and slow that thickening where anything was of the carotid artery wall. And these are things that could be simply measured, and how fast plaque gets cleared away, and, of course, how fast it could have been just built up because of what you're doing. Vitamins, really, in life food, which you should really learn about what life food is, which is one word, and that niacin and biotin and folate. Does anybody hear about, what biotin is? That's B7. What about folate? That's, B9. Does folic acid exist as an analog, but it's a toxin? Okay. So vitamin A and vitamin C, whole food vitamin mineral complex, you've got micro minerals, you've got zinc and copper and tyrosinase and vitamin P and vitamin K, where that is where vitamin C is. And these are all looked at, and you can see various blood markers that link more to calcium hardening, where you've got that going on where the inside of the arteries are. And you've got reactive angiotensin, two types of blocking that protects excessive inflammation that we've been talking about where life food is. And balanced nutrient, you've got a homeostatic mechanism that really is dealing with reactive angiotensin type of system. So flesh eating, of course, you really would have been running a bit of a risk there of ingesting parasitical spore, and even go back into all the older texts and things, you can find written things which teaching people, gee, don't go there where the flesh is. You've got Christian saying that cows and monkeys and donkeys and camels and sheep and goats and ducks, and fish, pigs, of course, don't have any parasite in them, or that's not any way that you're just picking up sort of worm-like parasite and things, because it's not meant to be in the body. Flesh, of course, where diet is, you've got animal flesh, and that could be just where something would have left its body and been scavenged, but you and I are really not scavengers like that. And we're closest, perhaps, where to other animals have had to use a semi-aquatic existence, and pigs sort of closer to our flesh relatives, yet it doesn't have any sweat gland. And so it does toxin that the pig eats isn't kind of sweated out like it could be for you and I. A toxin really is a parasite which remain where flesh is. An additional sort of science that shows that certain flesh, in the high IQ, like an animal has, where might a dog be, for instance, or something, and the flesh of these animals that you could imagine is intelligent, and the bloodbath of all the dolphins and, sating males like whales, a pig sort of could have a similar capacity, and for reasons of all the sort of pot-bellied types of advertisements where pets are, sort of, you're looking at the images that go on where somebody has a CAT scan, and you're looking at all these glowing sorts of little tiny specks which show up sort of grains of rice, and it's ever sinister because you've got Cysticercae larva cyst, where pork is, of course, and just generally never not. And so a tapeworm, of course, and you've got these Taenia cilium, which get lodged where the human tissue is. And it's just simple that where anybody would have been consuming flesh, you're looking at cysticercosis, you see, and someone swallows tapeworm eggs and things, and it's just being shed where their own feces are. And these little eggs, like these Thai eggs, sort of hatch and penetrate the intestinal wall and travel through the bloodstream, embedding themselves sort of in the muscle and skin and the brain. And you've got neurocysticercosis, you see. And it's sort of something which generally is something where you've got triggered seizures and chronic headache and inflammation, where cyst kind of becomes more degenerative where the tissue is. And so where those images are that we were talking about, sort of like little small wheat-like spots of grain and calcified calcium phosphate, and you could run a pen up and down your arm, you could feel the stone that's in the body in the various stages of disease. So live food really as a process, it's a better approach because you're looking at detox and you're looking at nutrient, and otherwise you're looking at parasite. And shouldn't you sort of have various anti-inflammatory types of, food? It's a chilling condition and a stark reminder, of course, where you've got these microscopic invaders that silently journeying through your body and using your body as its own sewer, you see. So that picture doesn't look good where you're looking at blood under a microscope. But looking at how dead food impacts that, you see, leaving a devastating consequence. And it's in the wake of jumping into a cliffhanger, and that flesh food really isn't for our species whatsoever, just like graphene oxide isn't either, and not meant for life, but injectables and all of that sort of thing. Is somebody going to say that graphene oxide hasn't showed up where injectables are and some contaminatedness is of the graphene oxide? And is that because that's just being used as a screen to get to nanosized sorts of particles and things like that? And ordinarily they would have used asbestos, but everybody goes, no, you can't use asbestos anymore. But they said don't use asbestos because we're always finding bits of that in everything that you run through those filters. And a payout was eventual. Most people died, and bit is put aside, and that's for people who could say they have various asbestos condition because that was in a definite various industrial commercial sorts of product, including medical condition, medicines and things, until that was, asbestos. They go, that's really bad. And now they're jumping into graphene oxide. Is that possible to break down those sheets which are so sharp and corrosive to cell structure and things, just sort of cut through stuff? And isn't that just so conductive? It's highly conductive. It's twice as conductive as copper. So graphene oxide really is a derivative of graphene, and it's not, something which you could really find like that in nature, not really, where it's a graphene oxide. It's emerging ever more where it's a condition that's going on and being put and being found more in modern medicine and things. But how do you break that down? And where graphene oxide is being used, where pain relief was, where these gels were and patches and sprays, it's really where that's being used, where delivery systems are and sensory engineering is going on, where tissue is, and people are looking into antimicrobials and stuff. But what's ever inhibiting the fear pathways where animal models are, graphene oxide is shown to silence neurons and disrupt the proper communication between synapses. And it can even trigger more fear than should be, and anxiety, and that. Graphene oxide sort of has adverse effects where respiratory irritation is, And inflammation and oxidative stress, where things are inhaled and that sort of thing I can think of. And so you've got DNA damage and a potential blood clot sorts of formation because of that material. And by its dimensional nature, it really causes unique interactions where the blood protein is, because it sort of grows into sheets and layers, and it's really sharp as its edge, so it doesn't really fit. And so you've got life colloidal membrane, which really getting in there, it really leads to severe sorts of effect of thrombogenicity, sorts of immune cell activation and things. Graphene oxide activates these capsase, three sorts of molecules, and that induces DNA damage. You've got cell lines and things, which has also been tested with and things, and it causes those cells to have an overproduction of radical oxygen species. And so this continues to induce ever more oxidative stress. And so that is DNA damage and unregulated, of course, signaling that changes the motility and the cytotoxicity and apoptosis and neoplastic initiation otherwise. So immune fibroblast cells, where graphene oxide is and entering the body, is really quite challenging, because the main issue of the oxidative stress is that it always is leading to ever more inflammation, silent inflammation and neoplastic condition. And so where dental aesthetics, for instance, could have been used, and those are containing various components like we're talking about, is it that certain compounds that's used which kind of can give an aesthetic which lasts for days, but because it's got substances in it, it really does cause dry socket and things, and it's not natural. And graphene oxide typically be found where with a slight negative charge dispersed where water is in life colloid solution, and a strong negative charge really is a key property that if you're looking at what distinguishes anything from a pristine condition versus it's really not in a pristine condition whatsoever, you've got, enzymatic resistant material like dead food and leaving a devastating sort of consequence. That doesn't mean that you could learn what live food is, which is preparing food, and that you need to blanch and you need to prepare seed and things like that, and you may need to prepare it, soak it, warm it, cook it and things, and that you're still having a value for enzyme in a meal. So somebody didn't have any lipase where their meal was. Why? Well, because they just had pasteurized oils. But then you had a bit of avocado. How good is that? That's attention to be live food. You've brought some lipase into the dish. So it's really graphene oxide, of course, that's totally not anything natural. It shouldn't be in any found into injectables. Graphene is the new asbestos. Asbestos, really, if you look into history, you could see the commercial products where it was used, and filters. That's right, filters. Wow. And so because of the fibers, things, and its strength and heat resistance, it would be used in these filters, but end up causing all sorts of black lung condition or mesothelioma. So you've really possible where things are not to be able to break down some substances, and those cause more clotting. It's highly conductive, where with what we're talking about, graphene oxide, and derivatives, which is emerging sort of really in material. Graphene oxide is commonly being used where pain relief medications are, of course, and the sprays and patches and the systems and things where sensors are, and tissue engineering. We've got life colloidal agent. And are people going to say that these are the things which is not inhibiting fear and things? You've got what you're looking at could be distinguishing things which is pristine, and graphene certainly isn't, and the ionization or deprotonation of numerous oxygen-containing sort of functional groups where you've got an attachedness where this is to surface, and you've got edges. So the harm where things are in a magnetic condition is also really to be looked at, because it's totally not compatible where the body is. And deprotonation, where water and aqueous environments are, it's an acidic group that's particularly like these carboxyl and phenolic hydroxyl groups, and these tend to all lose proton, forming negatively charged species. So graphene oxide enters the bloodstream, and it's really harmful because it includes blood clotting, it's thrombogenicity, and it causes a severe immune reaction. So that's anaphylaxis and inflammation. And so your red blood corpuscle damage, it's a red blood corpuscle, not a cell, okay, and hemolysis and oxidative stress and DNA damage. It's just a potential organ where dysfunction is for the liver, the lungs, the kidneys, and brain, and meninges of the brain, and ovaries and uterus. And it's really the interaction where any protein is and life color organelle, and leading to be where your terrain is no longer kept because you've got so much junk in there. You're not going to tell me that that's not really the cause of your silent inflammation and cell death where things go on. And what's the uniqueness about having a concentration and particle size and having that to be passed through graphene oxide filters, and being okay that a certain amount of that's going to be ending up in the substance that you have? It's like really off the chart, not quite right. And nor is having fluoride in any of these things, you see. So the damage in the lung, for the lung and the pancreas, the meninges of the brain, all could end up with inflammation and cytotoxicity. And graphene oxide induces cell toxicity. And did that come in through just biologics added to anything where somebody had intravenous? It's these graphene oxides and where derivatives are of this, where it's really being applied where you've got photocatalytic types of sensors and biomedical deliveries of these physiochemical property. So it's really becoming to be more widespread where you've got graphene oxides, you see. And shouldn't you be looking at the blood to see what's going on where this is? If you're looking, of course, this is Jubb cell rejuvenation, which really is applying a cleansing. And so your nerve could be eco-sterilized against all those non-ecological life colloid. And it's sort of ways that's more previously not even thought about, like the voltage of your blood and the voltage that can be drawn forward by immune cells to be able to clear things away to below the level of hydrogen using microvoltage. So it's the advancement where any research is that you've got glimpse channels in your brain. These only open because you've got nitrous oxide where you're laughing good. You've got carbon dioxide because you're relaxed, breathed all the carbon off. And these are the findings where any evidence is of a fitness that you have. And if your lymphatic system is working, it's going to be able to help clear things away, isn't it? Yes? And so neurophysiological behavior, just as pinpointing things for you where we're talking about things here, and you've got glimpse channels that really must have carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide to cause all of this to be able to be opened up, yes? If you're really looking at things, of course, people could learn, of course, my background more as a neurobehavior physiologist, and I've really spent time pointing out how what sort of opens up the glimpse channel, for instance, of your brain, and how carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide really, there's podcasts that people could learn more about this and cleansing the brain itself. But how do you reshape sort of insight where disorder is, and certain dementia and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's all involve impaired sort of taste, change and waste clearance. And if you're knowing, you've got lymphatic system, which is really 10 to 60 micrometer really in diameter, really small. In comparison, 1 micrometer is 1,000 nanometer. So a normal hair that's really fine could be 17 micrometer. and something really thick could be about 181 or something micrometer. So these channels in your brain are only 10 to 60 micrometer. So as fine as where hair is, and transforming someone's idea, which you must look at this level because it seems to be pretty small, doesn't it? But how's your brain going to clean if you're not a nose breather through sleep? It's really deeply connected to your lymphatic system and everything. So if you're enjoying the content of this, you really could consider listening into the other shows and everything. But coming to something which you could just bring up right now, which is the Liverpool Wellcome Protocol. A lot of things come out of Liverpool. That's interesting itself. And euthanasia, and then this idea of midazolam that's used that shuts down the breathing and causes death, and where somebody would have just got a computerized number where the treatment would have been ended, or in between treatments, somebody could have got an assessment where that is, and where the Liverpool Wellcome Protocol was and is, and it's sort of changed its name more now to, quality of life that you have or something. But 3 injections that could have been ordered where midazolam was one, and basically you only got like maybe 48 hours you could live after that. So that Liverpool care pathway sort of really leads to claims where anyone is, which is kind of for unlawful iatrogenic condition and no proper consent where anything is. And under the Commonwealth nations, it's sort of really adopted, and in the UK, for instance, and where other Commonwealth nations are, of course, you've got courts that uphold things where, executions today have come to be very high. And why was it that before all this happened, most of that got cleared away? Why? Because the process that was used could show too many faults wherever anything was, and too many innocent people had been put to death. So the process that's used where rights are taken away from somebody can't be, like just that sort of extrajudicial sorts of murders and things that's going on. But that midazolam is lethal where, it's injectable and combined where morphine is, and it's used, in some of these nations, and where things have been COVID, of course, and the pandemic, it's sort of really huge ethical questions where the sedation was that would have hastened anyone's death, in particular where your protocols were used as prophylactics, meaning, we're going to do this just in case. It's like, oh my God, and masks any underlying sort of issue. And so you've, got this context where things are, and this pandemic which we're talking about, and the amounts of midazolam and morphine that was used, and where somebody was just a patient and transferred where hospitals were into other places, but could be given like a do not resuscitate order because, somebody's tested and so they're going to have this, and so that's going to be the end of their life anyway. And so where those drugs are, you've got huge abreactions that go on where people are given that, which isn't reported. It's terrible. The sedated sorts of anesthesia and things where pain can still be felt is quite dramatic, and a great capacity there is for someone to have a felt condition of not being able to breathe. So the Liverpool connected points where debate is, and sedation protocol sort of is really some challenged circumstance, of course, where the hospice end of life is, and where lethal injections could have been given. A midazolam can induce unconsciousness in the central condition where ethic is, you see, and your lawful condition. And so what plan would ever be where something is going on today that if you've not looked into things, it's really that plans could be, and for the whole earth, just you could look at described doctors dancing around and nurses in hospital beds and big, large skeletal figures like Harry Potter and villain Lord Voldemort, which is holding a wand and not a needle, but part of the 2012 London Summer Olympics open ceremony. So the segment that sort of is attributed to this is you've got your UK National Health Service and British children's literature and everything, and you've got something going on there where, it's just overboard. Nobody's going to say that a monopoly can't do all of those things and put it all together. But in the 90s, by the late period, you've got the Royal Liverpool University Hospitals, and you've got this National Health, trust that goes on, and the Liverpool Healthcare for Dying, and you've got hospice sort of recommending whatever it would be as end-of-life care, and eventually sort of apparently this gets a little phased out around 2014, but moves into other ways of that same thing going on. And life care where planning is midazolam, and you really could see a case where what medical prophylactic measures have been used, and the three drugs that are used to intubate, where somebody puts a tube down your throat suddenly, and so they've got only a certain amount of time to be able to do that. And these drugs all used, which are just incredible. So sedative, hypnotic sorts of agents of inducing a slight state of unconscious amnesia relative. And you've got drugs which are preferred where someone could say, oh, this person doesn't have a stable sort of blood pressure, and hemodynamic sorts of stable types of drugs are given. And you've got drugs that provide sort of rapid onset recovery sorts of apparent, and ketamine, which induces a dissociative types of state, and bronchodilation effect sort of. So you've got midazolam, which is a fast-acting benzodiazepine, which really is used for people who are a bit anxious and also amnesia. Looking at midazolam, of course, you've got death from respiratory types of conditions that causes, and where palliative care sort of people have been given small doses, maybe to calm them and things, and this is really very risky. And how could that be managed? Because somebody's sort of becoming sort of like a zombie afterward. So the injectables all related perhaps to someone saying that population was over or something, which that's just bulldust. But what's careful where somebody would have been shot and whatever the adjuncts that's in there, and for people that are of a certain age and older, you've got oils in water, emulsives, and sort of squalene types of things from sharks and stuff, and aluminium salts, aluminium hydroxide and phosphates, and potassium aluminium sulfates. And these all adjuncts really are all, heavy metal. And then, you're going to find some egg protein and what's injectable grown where eggs are. It's just that they contain molecules which really don't fit into the body at all. And so egg protein, where something is injectable, grown, and contains traces of ovalbumin, which is from the egg protein, you've got polyethylated glycol molecules, which a lot of that stuff attaches to. And how do you help inactivate all of that virus? You've got mercury-contained sorts of preservatives that's been, and multi-dose sorts of vials to have apparent prevented sort of some contaminatedness, but toxified and, of course, pleomorphed in large batches. It's not that something pre-filled where a syringe would be. It's like what the surfactant is in our own body. It's really not. What's in a bird and an egg, for instance, doesn't have the same surfactant whatsoever. And mammals, where phospholipid is, and you've got dipalmolphy, phosphacetylcholine, and genetic influences where you've got basic metabolic pathways that's existing, and you've got genetic variation. That's these polymorphic types of conditions, and efficiency where choline and phosphacetylcholine metabolism is, and mutations where gene are. These are certain where surfactant is on endothelial cells, and you've got disorders that go on where that is, and even newborn. So it just highlights that, you've got punctuation changes where genetic is going on, and you've got all of these synthetic molecules, and what's high heat where anything is causing something to be enzyme resistant, and you've got heated enzymes, and how the phagocytic cells clear all of that away if you just sort of bring it all in. It really is a condition that eventually changes surfactant and phospholipid composition of your endothelial cells, which secrete various fluids, and those fluids can become sticky, and that's what cystic fibrosis is. So all sorts of respiratory distress and these molecules that are released, creating a lot more inflammation. You've got the role of our own body surfactant, which you must have. That's N-acetylneurominic acid, vitamin L, or life hydrate, something that we are into. And what's common where any form of sialic acid is, it's essential, see, because where that then is combined with aluminium oxide, these have really become very problematic. And so lots of pills, for instance, people have had, certain it is, you've got sialic acid in there and also aluminium oxide, where aspirin-like things are. And the component where that is on the nervous system, really, in the body, and what's cooked and consumed, toxic, and phagocytosis, where immune cells are, you're really looking at what's a really surfactant dysfunction, and foreign new toxin impacts that to create these conditions, especially all the toxin which is in injectables that would ever be put into anything like your lettuce or anything. So, egg protein, yes, certain. Lots of these vaccines and things and injectables are grown in eggs and contain trace amounts of that. You've got these conditions going on, certainly. So if you're looking at surfactant, yes, it's these tiny little small elements which help modify everything, where surface membranes are coming together. And nobody's going to say that foreign, of course, non-ecological and new toxin, meaning toxin and nutrient that could have been brought in, isn't a greater condition that's this acquired respiratory distress syndromes and things that goes on where injectable and substances that end up coming in, which is these forever molecules, aren't compromising your immunity. And so where anybody is in between treatments or at the end of a treatment, age is of not any matter. Of course, where somebody's sort of anxious a bit and they have a little agitation, nobody's going to say that's just not fungus in the brain. And cleaning that up. But what if it's not? A primary condition, iatrogenic, is where somebody's looking at another and thinking, oh, there we've got severe restlessness and we're going to treat that. And we have distress, we're going to treat that. We've got terminal agitation and sort of can't be sort of relieved by other means, labelled. It's crazy because where somebody gets labelled, wow, what happens after that? Studies have shown where innocent people were and they volunteered, and there were 8 of them, and they went to slow but sure come to be in a psychiatric condition, which all they said was they had a voice that said empty. And after that, what happened to them over the course of a month? There were some 1,000-odd sorts of drugs and things that would be used, and most of them got diagnosed as being, schizophrenic and or borderline personality disorder. Until it was just found that they were just, people that were doing an experiment and that were just looking into, how it would be that somebody could find themselves where this is. But midazolam today, it's a sedative, and it really does induce states of unconsciousness. And you've got phenocuronium bromides, which is paralytic agent, actually. It causes muscle paralysis. It's really, that includes the diaphragm, and you've got respiratory arrest or a feeling of suffocation. It's like, this is a terrible iatrogenic abreactive condition. If you ever are where you are and you've witnessed this, and people could be able to have expressed things, you can see this going on. And inside, somebody's feeling suffocated. How do you feel where that's going on? So, and then potassium chloride is used, and that is slow but sure going to cause cardiac arrest, you see. So, where somebody got an end-of-life label on a computer, and the management of anything was just palliative sedation. Yeah, because label terminal restlessness and seizures and things just like this possible. So dangerous ideas where iatrogenic condition is in abreactions. And is anybody know about that? Well, how could a corpse know about it? It can't. So unless you've been given the experience where some bad reactedness is, you've seen the abreactions that go on where these drugs are given, it's like, my God, it's not something that you would want to sit down and have yourself. It's just a cocktail to hell. And expressed where some degree is of your sense of everything, and that's managing your anxiety. Hell no, quite opposite. And studies of your brain and things that go on afterward show such. And so, a withdrawal where care is, it could be just thought of as some catastrophic type of a condition because, new toxin is there, and who's considered you've got to putting toxin in, how do you know how it comes out? And so engineered lettuce, it shouldn't be right. That's been injected where antigens are to immunize people who eat that. That's just off the chart, completely wrong. Eliminating all of the needles where things are, where refrigeration is, no need for that. Well, that may be sort of seeming right, where lettuce can generate sort of protein from pathogen, and then nobody's going to say that that doesn't impact the liver and the molecules that are released. That's called hepatitis B or A. But triggering your immune system in response where anything identical is existed, where something was injected, it's not meant to be in your immune system. And what's the field where anything is, that's where this is developed? And in regions, of course, it's 73% apparent that what survival is, where any monopolized protocol was of toxin and developed sort of by a big market, and the big pharma cash in and Roundup, it's sort of just the injectable equipment, edible where anything is, and the idea that immunize billions and transfer over to some gates of hell where anything is just not a proper care. Where transgenic sort of expressions of pathogen are, where surface protein is, where you're eating lettuce, and it's like, well, no, that's not right. Chloroplast all are designed to sort of pull all of that in, not broken down, and in an acid condition of your stomach, and survive that stomach acid and go on to be where your immune cells are in pie patches, and immune cells bring all of a sudden having to recognize something as a foreign pathogen and generate sort of protectiveness where actual pathogen would be. You've got antigen, and all of this is produced by plant as natural pacifier that can help eco-sterilize and keep your blood good. But what about all of that big pharma sorts of things gone on in the past, and immunisation and nobody's going to say that that isn't the dearth of farming and things and any democratized types of condition. It should be choosing a republic at peace and choosing the social compact that you have, you see. So if you're looking at corporate contaminated condition, nobody is home where that is. That's a corpse, okay? So a corpse can't hear or feel or see anything going on, but who owns the corpse can. So it's what's forced where any medicatedness is, and it's just a trail of where money was spent, and what for, and where did that money come from, and who was involved in the spending of that money. So what ideology ever is there that opposes some genetic modifiedness, which really is literally destroying things, and what's injected where something is synthetic? And, of course, most everybody would have some sort of hesitancy, and certain, if you look at that into the past, you'll see there was massive hesitancy in relation to what's existed today. And whatever needle phobia has been, a great distrust has always been, and that is a grassroots movement, not some astroturfed conditioning, where you've got edibles and you've got injected things. Most have a series of injection, you see, and that's common. And so, to grow lettuce and put the substances into that is quite extreme. And you can see fields sort of in the public don't care for that. And you could see quite a bit of a reactiveness about it. Nobody's going to say that that's not public opinion. These are the things which should shape policies that's made. That's you and I sitting above the Legislative Assembly. So, it's up to you and I. Don't tell me that that's something out there. It's going to be off the chart. Sorry. Your brain shrinks over time, and ever dead food where that would have been, and it's like 0.5% of the volume of what it has, as every year could have passed by maybe. And so Life Food program really can increase that volume, and it could step it back up, and over a year it can have grown 4.3% more back, you see. So at 90 years of age, somebody can do things just like this. You've got enzymatic lipase, where Life Food is from nut and seed, and after 90 days of anybody being on a program like this, it was for us to see quite a reversed condition and healing up. And so it's remarkable. But, you're looking into the powerful blend of various essential fats which have got their enzyme and not oxidized. So the product is, and you've got delta-tocotrienols, which is 4,000 times more powerful than vitamin E. You've got substances which you can just reactivate all spent antioxidant, you see, and nourish the brain cell and protect against oxidative stress. So somebody's going to say that they didn't take that approach. Well, they hadn't got on a proper approach then if they didn't. So you've got a whole range of things that used to be consumed, like purslane, which is just dynamite rich with these, beautiful omega-3 sorts of strengthened neuron membrane types of prostaglandin material. And communication occurs from your appendix to the brain upstairs, which is connected. You can't have, fungus in your brain or fungus in your blood. And have you got fungus in your blood? Well, most people do if you've been consuming all of these high-processed food. So purslane, for instance, just as an example, it's such an incredible food. These have got polyphenols that really can enhance blood flow and cause you to be delivered ever more of a bit of a mental sharpness. Live food is much for you to have a healthier terrain. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. That's the head, that's the ding. Natural environment, yes, allowing your nerve repair and rebuildedness and its proper growth. And otherwise you've got, an anterior, a pituitary, and a posterior pituitary, and you've got that gland, and you've got the pineal gland. And one is set by the dark, and the other is ever more focused where light is. These things have to function properly. So over 42 days, you could really see measurable impacts where cognition is and your better long-term memory and capacity. And these are things that can just be woken back up after several days of doing things that's like this, okay? So live food, why don't you look into this? It's really the simple science of supporting ways for you to rejuvenate and have longevity. So it's protecting all the long-term cognitive functioning. And so if you're sticking with live food, why not? That's plant-based. Otherwise, you've got legumes. That's all like, beans and flesh. And so extra phosphate, got lots of thyroid-globulin-like molecules that can be impacting things in excess. Proline and methionine glutathione, which is not live food. Why? Because, live food doesn't really have any flesh or bean in it. So otherwise you've got molecules which is close to snake venom, and those don't fit into the mammalian body relative. So legume, a notable bean and clover sorts of things, which is goitrogenic. You've got isoflavones, which interfere with thyroid function and inhibit the uptake of iodine and thyroid. And if you're cooking on these Teflon pans and stuff, you've got forever molecules. If you throw those fragrances into everything you're breathing, it's like all of a sudden, it's like, thyroid. It's the second most vascular organ in the body. And the first element that's missing where the thyroid is not what people think, and that is silica. So when you look into studies and you see quite what is remarkable, you see silica is the first micronutrient missing from the thyroid. And so, that's so important. You've got to have aromatic amino acids to have proper silica molecules and things. Plant extract, and where plants are, you've got Lycopocus virginicus, you've got Melissa officinals. You've got all of these incredible plants. We would go to heath bushes and things and go where the roots are to find such incredible nutrient. And so it's just an idea which could be looked at. Of course, most are opposed to any genetic modifiedness too much because, you've got a hesitancy that's gone on, and parents ever more driven by a distrust because you could look to see that information was covered over and it was stand down orders, stand down. So those are things that show most people on the earth sort of really distrust, of course. And what's here in Turtle Island, that's North America, and what edible vaccine and dropping from the skies, to wipe out the animals and stuff, is just horrific. Most really are objecting to all of that, but you've got vaccines being injected into lettuce. So if the brain shrank over the period of all of this time, and every year that passed by was like 0.5% or something of its volume, and it's just you beginning a live food program and increasing the brain volume by more than 4.3%, and you've got these plant-based molecules which like in the Lycopus virginicus and Melissa officials, officials, they all contain constituents which really can inhibit the thyroid-stimulating hormone receptor and forming adducts. You've got all sorts of things going on which cause Graves types of conditions, which is again sort of environmental disruptors impacting the thyroid and its ability to be able to cleanse itself. So artificial food dye, where all of that's been, just as an example, you've got digestion and what's eliminated and what's not broken down, you see, into proper smaller component that could be cleared away. And now you're going to have some liver condition that has to go on where that is. It's like, how do you get a new toxin out if you put it in? So looking at what's treatable or what's of foreign substance, but this doesn't have any nutritional value whatsoever. It's really substances that are absorbed, not thought about at all. Why? Because nobody had a proper approach, as they should. And so metabolism and physiological, psychological types of condition, or certain it is that are all harmed by toxin, you see? So what's exact where any figure is and what the research is, you've got 90% of all these drug candidates that come to be and then just fail overall where efficacy is. And it's the largest single cause of followed sort of toxicity and factors. And the database where things are just withdrawn, for instance, it's like, includes, let's just say 500, at least 500 medical product you could just have a little look at. That's a lot. All withdrawn because discontinued, and even in a nation and sometimes worldwide. And studies that 71 out of 222 sorts of drugs that's approved, where a decade has just existed from 2000 to 2009, and then things was just withdrawn. Why? Well, because it had serious safety conditions and warnings that had to be added. And a lot of this stuff lost its approval and things. And so where drug banks exist, where you're looking at all of the withdrawn drugs, it just covers such a broad time frame. You're looking at what's international and what's commercial, just put. And how can we trust really that either? But annual production and global chemical industrial complex has just grown rapid where synthetic chemicals are. And it's sixfold now than it would have been, and moving into from 2000 to 2050, it's just, unless it's stopped, it's just radical. It's like plastic everywhere, you see. Same thing. So massive volumes of 250 billion tonnes of chemicals produced globally, where the year is, and 2.5 trillion tonnes of synthetic chemicals produced in a decade or so, from 2014 to 2024. You've got chemicals, approximately like a couple thousand at least, added, where you've got, water run off and going into the sea. 350,000 synthetic chemical mixtures and chemicals currently sort of in global commerce, all finding their way into the marine environment. And so, what's going to be happening to all the fish and everything? The pesticide, 284 sort of different sorts of pesticides that I could look at and see surface water across all the nations. And same thing. It just never used to be like that, but it sure is. And is somebody going to say they can't, and sure do, find DDT and the remains of all these long-term sorts of toxins in the environment? You've got what is remaining long-term as contaminant in those marine sediment, and substances like these polyfluoral ethylated compounds. You've got 14,000 man-made forever sort of chemicals and used and put into these synthetic little dryer wash and things, and consumer product, which you can see these chemicals in the sea foam and ocean spray in quite concentrations where that distribution of all of those products are on coastal environments. So just like geoengineering and climate, using ELF, high auroral radial pulse sorts of energy to shape the magnetosphere to change the rivers upstairs and cause, a movement of the winds. But the biggest threat to oceans is really alongside pollution. It's a really interconnected use of all of these wide range, damaging forever sorts of molecule, and the monopoly that's existed just to have all of that there. And if you dive deeper into this, it's just staggering. You've got the reality of thousands of drugs withdrawn and the ocean's polluted where synthetic chemical is. And the world is sort of drowning in a toxic exposure. And shouldn't that be just stopped? It's an episode that we should get into to ask the question, of course, because how could you keep listening where anything is as the evening news would be and no solution ever that's innovation except just these pharmaceuticals or surgery? It's looking at exploring whole brain patterning and job cell rejuvenation and what's the right environment and nutrient and detox support. You could be sort of ever more revealing things that's coming up here now in what we could be talking about, job cell rejuvenation, and how do you redefine the approach where you've got neurodegenerative disease and vascular health. It really is your capacity to have overall longevity. So you really won't want to miss this deep dive ever more into this natural mechanisms that's sort of going on. It's got really great about repair, of course, and regenerativeness, yes, so that you're sort of ever more thriving where you are. Anyway, I hope this show's been great for you. Look forward to catch up to you in the next show that we're doing coming up.